Hello and good evening, and tonight I'd like to welcome you all back to tonight's episode of Album Rant, and as you can see in front of you, I am once again going to talk about legendary Australian hard rock and roll, in some cases maybe heavy metal artist, the one and only AC/DC. And tonight I am going to be covering what is their 7th studio release entitled Back in Black, released in 1980. And this would be the very first album they ever did with lead vocalist Brian Johnson, who replaced the recently deceased, may he rest in peace, Bon Scott. Now, I have talked about these guys a couple of times on this channel, but in case you're just tuning in for the very first time, I'd like to kind of give you an idea of how we got to where we are today. And they originated in the early 70s by two brothers by the name of Malcolm and Angus Young, who played lead guitar and rhythm guitar. And I know in those very early days, they went through a ton of lineup changes, mostly with the bass player and the drummer, but they found a somewhat consistent lead vocalist with the aforementioned Bon Scott, and in 1975, they released their very first album entitled High Voltage. Now, most of you are probably familiar with the international release of High Voltage, which has songs like It's a Long Way to the Top If You Want to Rock and Roll, The Jack, TNT, the title track High Voltage, and that is not the High Voltage that I'm talking about. I am talking about the very original Australian release-only version, and this was really a very different AC/DC than what most of you are familiar with. This was really more of a glam rock band as opposed to more of a raunchy rock and roll band as we're more well familiar with. And they, on that album, there were songs such as Show Business and a cover of Baby Please Don't Go and Little Lover. And what else? Soul Stripper, and You Ain't Got a Hold on Me, and Love Song, which was their one and only love ballad. Yes, I did just say that. AC/DC at one point did release a love ballad. But anyways, after that initial debut High Voltage album, they went in kind of a different direction. And for their second album, which was entitled TNT, which was released later that year in 1975, they adopted the sound that most of us associate this band with. And this was the album where we had the classics, like It's a Long Way to the Top If You Want to Rock and Roll, The Jack, TNT, the song High Voltage. Yes, it was originally released on TNT, not High Voltage. And we had some other songs that I didn't mention earlier, such as Rocker and a cover of Chuck Berry's School Days, which was a very, very decent cover. And so it seems that after that second album, AC/DC had adopted their signature sound, and they would continue on with that. Because in 1976, they released their third studio release entitled Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. And I know most of you are familiar with the title track. Comes on the radio frequently. Overplayed, yeah. Is it a good song? Sure it is. But other highlights from that album were, Right On. And what else? There's going to be some Rockin' and Problem Child and Squealer and Jailbreak, which was phenomenal, by the way. Such a mighty anthem. I love Jailbreak. There was also the very ridiculous Big Balls and R.I.P. Rockin' Peace. And so they came back the next year with their fourth studio release, one that I have reviewed on Album Rant before, 1977's Let There Be Rock. And this is the album that really put them on the map. This was the album that really, made them an international phenomenon, because Let There Be Rock is an absolute gem. I really love Let There Be Rock. We had Go Down. We had Dog Eat Dog. We had Bad Boy Boogie. What else was there? There was the title track. There was Overdose. There was Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be. Another very ridiculous number entitled Crab City in Blue. And of course, the very Led Zeppelin, it's inspired like closing track, Whole Lotta Rosie. And again, they were really just cranking it out album after album back then. Because in 1978, they came back again and they released Powerage, which may have been their heaviest album at the time. And I gotta tell you, Powerage is a very underrated album. If you haven't really fully heard it in its entirety, you really have to. Because I love Rock and Roll Damnation. I love Down Payment Blues. I love Gimme a Bullet. I love Riff Raff. I love Sin City. I love What's Next to the Moon. I love Gone Shootin'. I love Kicked in the Teeth. And I think I forgot one, but that's all right. But anyways, Powerage was, again, another incredible effort from AC/DC, and they did release their very first live album entitled If You Want Blood, You've Got It, that very same year, and it is one of the greatest live albums ever. So then they followed it up again in 1979, and like I said, these guys were on such a roll, because they released their big anthem, Highway to Hell, in 1979 off the album Highway to Hell. This one was produced by Robert John Mutt Lang, who is also very well known for his work with Def Leppard. But Highway to Hell, aside from the title track, which again is another one of those songs that is on the radio nonstop. There was also Girls Got Rhythm. There was Beating Around the Bush. There was Love Hungry Man. There was the song, If You Want Blood, You've Got It. What else? Touch Too Much. Shot Down in Flames. And it really seemed like AC/DC could do no wrong in the mid to late 70s. However, unfortunately, later that year, or actually it might have been early in 1980, I need to check, I guess. But Bon Scott, unfortunately, went on an alcohol binge and unfortunately, tragically passed away from alcohol poisoning. So now it seems that the band is without a lead singer. And for a little bit, the group did consider disbanding and breaking up, but they found another lead vocalist who, under the advisement of Mutt Lang, they recruited to be Bon Scott's replacement, former singer for a band called Geordie. I think I'm saying that correctly, but the guy's name was Brian Johnson, and he would essentially be the group's singer all the way up till today, so he stuck with them for over 40 years, okay? And I gotta say this, every song on this album is credited to Brian Johnson and the Young Brothers, and it's really a source of contention as to whether Bon Scott actually wrote the lyrics to this album. I have heard conflicting reports, so I'm not exactly sure, but regardless, it is a topic of debate in today's society. So this was released as a tribute to Bon Scott, but Bon Scott was never actually credited for any of the songs, and that has led to a ton of speculation. According to, Angus Young, Bon Scott did actually perform drums on a demo of Let Me Put My Love Into You and Have a Drink on Me, and according to Angus Young, that is where his contributions end. So again, we have conflicting reports. I'm not fully sure, but let's go ahead and dive right into this thing. So as I pull this out right here, let's see what we have. We have a picture of the band. Yep, there are the guys. There's the star Angus Young right there, bassist Cliff Williams, drummer Phil Rudd, rhythm guitarist Malcolm Young, and there is the new guy, Brian Johnson. And over here, we have some credits, not really much to say there. And then on the back, we have a track list. And so this album kicks off, actually, is this in order? This is not in order, so I'm going to have to kind of rearrange this a little bit, but it's going to be okay. The first actual track on this album was Hell's Bells. And, well, it kicks off, of course, with a bell. And it just keeps ringing and ringing for a couple of seconds or so. And then the guitar comes in, and you might think that we're going to have a very thunderous, very explosive opener, like maybe on some of the other albums. We actually don't. This one starts out very dark and very moody, and like I said, kind of brooding, I guess you would say, and it kind of builds up on itself. It kind of builds in and builds in because the various other members of the band start coming in at a very progressive rate, and it's kind of a change of pace as to what you would expect from this band, because I'm not sure, maybe they did do something previously that was kind of like this, but if they did, they definitely did not do this very often, because this was definitely a change in direction. Because again, this is a much darker song than what we may be accustomed to, but I really, really love it. This album was recorded actually in the Bahamas, and there were several tropical storms apparently that disrupted the recording sessions, and they do make reference to this in the lyrics. When we have, I'm rolling thunder, pouring rain, I'm coming on like a hurricane. My lightning's flashing across the sky, you're only young but you're gonna die. So yeah, that's a reference to their experience when recording this album, but I mean, that's all great just the same. But then, of course, when the chorus starts building up, we have, I won't take no prisoners, won't spare no lives, nobody's putting up a fight. I got my bell, I'll take you to hell, I'm gonna get you, oh Satan get you. And then, of course, we have, oh hell's bells, and it's just a very, very explosive song, and I really love Hell's Bells. I have loved it ever since I was a kid, and I still think that way as an adult, and so, yeah, Hell's Bell is great. Is it overplayed? Yes, it is, but that doesn't mean it's not a great song. It absolutely is, and it is often played at sporting events, so many people may know it from, that experience. But yes, this was one of my favorite songs as a kid. So the next song is going to actually be Shoot to Thrill. And this one starts out pretty fast, typical AC/DC fashion. These guys are often criticized for being overly repetitive, and well, there is some truth to that. Like, one time I made a compilation CD, and I had a very recent song from 2008 and a song from 1977 that were back to back. They sounded very similar. They sound like they both came from the same time period, so take that for what you will. But yeah, Shoot to Thrill is another very famous song, also very overplayed on the radio, and it's often played in concert. I have seen these guys once on the Black Ice Tour of 2008, and they did play Shoot to Thrill. Allegedly, it's about a pusher who was selling narcotics to, quote, lonely and depressed housewives. So yeah, we have that. But yeah, I mean, it's a very, very fast song. I really love it. But what actually is kind of interesting is the interlude. It goes on for a little bit and it kind of slows down a bit. It gets kind of mellow for a bit. And I think that was a very nice touch. They don't often do that. I mean, often they have verse, chorus, a little jam session, then one more chorus, and that's it. I actually picked up on that as a 14-year-old, which, is definitely saying something. But yeah, I mean, Shoot to Thrill is a great song, very heavy, very fast. I love it. Now, what comes next is going to be What Do You Do for Money, Honey? So right there, that's actually the third song on the album. And I love it, okay? Something about Back in Black, this was actually the first AC/DC album I ever heard. And after that, I was like, yes, I love AC/DC. Let's go get their other stuff. So I got Let There Be Rock and High Voltage and Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap and some of their live stuff. And strangely enough, I kind of put Back in Black on the back burner for a little bit, and I just listened to those new albums that I got because, well, by that point I was hooked on them, so I expanded myself, and I never actually listened too much to the rest of the album. But I did hear What Do You Do for Money, Honey a long time ago when I'm at a concert, I'm waiting for the band to come out, and there's playing some music. And I was like, yeah, I really need to give What Do You Do for Money, Honey another shot, because after that I did, and I was like, yeah, I really love this song. Apparently, it's about a woman who's into something, I don't know, but You're working in bars, riding in cars, never gonna get it for free. Your apartment with a view on the finest avenue, looking at your beat on the street. You're always pushing, shoving, satisfied with nothing. You bitch, you must be getting old. So stop your love on the road. And yeah, and then of course, you know, you're digging for gold, and you make me wonder, yes, I'm wondering, of course, you got the chorus. Honey, what do you do for money? It's very catchy, and the lyrics are, as I just kind of recited, they're very, very catchy, and they're very, they're kind of hilarious, actually. But yeah, I mean, What Do You Do for Money, Honey is a very underrated song, and I really wish people would hear that one more often, or speak more highly of it, because this album right here, most people just talk about Hell's Bells and the title track, and What Do You Do for Money, Honey kind of falls through the crack. Same thing with Giving the Dog a Bone, which is actually the fourth song right there. This one comes out swinging. This one comes out very, very fast and very heavy. Once again, it's like, dun, dun, dun. I'm not going to do it, never mind. But anyways, again, it's another very fast song, and the chorus is so simplistic, but it's also great. It just goes, I'm just giving the dog a bone, giving the dog a bone, giving the dog a bone, giving the dog a bone. I mean, it probably did not take them too much time to come up with that arrangement, but I really, really love it. And yeah, Giving the Dog a Bone is another very underrated AC/DC track. And the last song from side one is going to be Let Me Put My Love Into You. Yeah, it should probably be all I need to say about that. But this one is actually a little bit more bluesy and a little bit more soft, actually. This one is a lot more slow than the previous three songs, and that's totally fine. AC/DC has delved into the blues before, like with Ride On and a whole lot of Rosie, and the blues are not really a new thing for them or anything, but this one is just such a raunchy song. I love it. It's also really hilarious. And, you know, of course, the chorus is not much to say, not much to write home about. It's just, let me put my love into you, babe. Let me put my love on the line. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty by the books, not much to write home about, but yeah, it's a very, very sleazy yet hilarious song. But yeah, some of these lyrics, again, people today may find them quote-unquote problematic. I say get over it. But we have, don't you struggle, don't you fight, don't you worry, because it's your turn tonight. All right, so that is going to conclude side number one. And what is my favorite from side number one? It's probably What Do You Do for Money, Honey. My second favorite is probably Giving the Dog a Bone, then Back in Black, then Shoot to Thrill, and then Let Me Put My Love Into You. But again, side one is completely solid. Side one is an absolute beast, and I have no complaints about side one. As far as side two goes, it may not quite be as strong as the first one, but I mean, it's not without its merits. But yes, it all starts right there with the title track, Back in Black. And I know that Hell's Bells is overplayed. I know Shoot to Thrill is overplayed. I'm not really tired of them, I'm really not. Back in Black, I am kind of tired of, okay? I think it's a little bit weaker than the aforementioned songs, and the fact that it is overplayed nonstop constantly is not helping too much. But again, it was written as a tribute to Bon Scott, and there's that, at least I have to respect that. But we all know the very, very iconic opening riff. Dun, 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 dun. I'm back in black, I hit the sack. I forget the lyrics, but, you know, we got the chorus that just goes, I'm back, back, back in black. Yes, I'm back in black. And yeah, again, we've all heard it. It was in the film School of Rock, so I'm pretty sure you've heard that as well from that source. And yes, comes on the radio frequently, and I am flat out tired of that song. That doesn't mean it's a bad song. In fact, it's quite a good song, but after the 50 billionth time I heard it, I started to get a little bit tired of it, if you know what I mean. But yeah, that's Back in Black. And while I'm on the subject, we are then going to go to track number 7, You Shook Me All Night Long, which I am also sick and tired of, okay? I love this song as a kid, all right? This was the song that, that I had heard on the radio, and I was like, wow, that's AC/DC. I love AC/DC, so I guess I like You Shook Me All Night Long. And I heard it over and over and over and over again. And again, much like Back in Black, it's not good enough for me to put aside the fact that it's overplayed. And yeah, I'm done with it. But still, it is a good song, even though I'm just sick of it. Now, something about this, there is a lot of controversy over the lyrics of You Shook Me All Night Long. Not that they're sexually explicit or anything, but there are sources out there. In fact, many people who knew Bon Scott who swear on their life that Bon Scott wrote the lyrics to You Shook Me All Night Long. One of his girlfriends says that in 1976, she heard Bon Scott saying the lyrics and talking about them, and that he actually wrote the lyrics all the way back in 1976. I don't know if that's true, I really don't, but despite that, the lyrics are very iconic, very famous, no matter who wrote them. But, some people are saying Bon Scott contributed practically nothing to this album. Some people are saying he contributed quite a bit, wrote most of the lyrics. So if he really did write the lyrics, I think he does deserve his credit. And I don't really know why the band would ever deny him the credit because, it's not like they parted on bad terms or anything, but who knows. So, anyways, now that I've kind of getting off my pedestal here, let's go to track number 8, Have a Drink on Me. And this is another one I have heard a little bit on the radio, but not too much. This one's starts out a little bit more bluesy once again, and was never really quite what I was into, but I mean, it's still a very good song, despite the fact that, again, it's very, very simplistic, and may not quite have the hook that some of these other songs have, but yeah, I do recommend Have a Drink on Me. Shake a Leg is a little bit faster, and it's got more of a punch to it than Have a Drink on Me. And by this point, I would say this is the strongest song on the side 2, not the album, but side 2. And yeah, very fast and pretty jamming. And again, pretty straightforward chorus, shake a leg, shake your head, shake the leg, shake a leg, wake the dead, shake a leg, get stuck in, shake a leg, dun, 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 dun. And I think I did that correctly, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty fast towards the end, and it's got great punch to it. I do like Shake a Leg. But then we end with Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution. That is the final track from the album. And originally this was not going to be on the album at all, but Atlantic Records apparently told them that we want an album with 10 tracks. 9's a little bit awkward. Make it 10. So they wrote this song in about 15 minutes or so, which is quite impressive because it is a really solid song. It's a little bit different than some of the other stuff that was on this album. This one starts out very, very bluesy and very soft. And kind of like Hell's Bells in a sense, it kind of builds into itself, which I can appreciate in everything. I did not like this one as a kid, but growing up, I have come to appreciate it a lot more, and I really like it. Rock and roll ain't noise pollution. Great song, okay? And again, for the fact that it was just thrown on the album at the last minute so that they could have, 10 songs on there, I think it's pretty impressive that it turned out as well as it did. And this was actually released as a single, believe it or not, and it turns out that it is actually one of their more well-known songs, and yeah, I like it. Now, what's my favorite from side 2? It's still probably Shake a Leg, but Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution is a definite second contender. So, do I recommend this album? You bet I do. This is one of their greatest albums. Is it their best? I don't know. I will do an AC/DC ranking video at some point in my life. but it's definitely one of their classic albums, and it is certainly the best album where Brian Johnson was the lead vocalist. This is right up with the best of Bon Scott, and again, if you've only heard the radio hits, you know, Shoot to Thrill, Hell's Bells, and the title track, and You Shook Me All Night Long, hear the rest of this album, because the rest of this album is just as good as those hit singles, and in some cases, it's even better. So yeah, Back in Black, great album, highly, highly recommended. So anyways, the next album that I'm going to review, it would be a sin not to, but anyways, until then, have a very pleasant evening.